Hello, 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 coaches and leaders. I am so excited. I have a very smart and passionate person on with us today, George Couros. And we're going to talk about a bunch of stuff, but we're going to actually talk about a thing I've not talked about yet on the podcast. So I'm really excited to breach this topic. We're going to talk about AI in coaching and leadership. And also, he has some really interesting thoughts around having an innovator's mindset. So, everyone that listens knows mindsets are my jam. So, we're going to talk about that as well. But before we jump into that, George, I wanted to welcome you to the show. I'm excited you're here.
Yeah, it was, I one of my favorite things about the podcast, like being on other people's podcasts, is actually before the podcast, getting to know you, getting to see
Yeah.
some of the work that you're doing. So I'm really honored, and I hope I can help your audience in some way. And thanks for having the time to put me on your podcast.
Yeah, it's really great. So I would just love you to briefly share in a couple sentences
Yep.
here. What is it that you do in the world of leadership and education?
Yeah, my focus is really probably for the last 15 years has been on innovation and education. And weirdly enough, I actually was a principal of a school district, and I had taught before and vice principal. But we were doing some really different things. And I was actually pulled into our central office to basically say, like, can you replicate what you're doing here? And we're kind of talked about it, and I was going to be the division principal of educational technology. But I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to be the ed tech person, because as soon as technology is in your title, you're fixing computers. Like that, it's like, hey, our electricity is down. So I was like, I don't want to do that. That's not
Yeah.
what I focus on. So I remember talking to my brother, who does similar to work. He's at the university level, and him and I were talking, and we talked about the idea of like really focusing on innovation. And I pitched the idea of division principal of innovative teaching and learning to my superintendent, and he loved it. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, this sounds great. But we're like, what does that even mean? And part of my work was to really define what was innovation and
Hmm.
what did we mean by that. And then how do we get as many people to really kind of not just embrace it, but see themselves as innovators. And
Hmm.
I think a lot of times people use the word technology synonymously with innovation, but it's not that at all. It's just
Hmm.
really thinking about new and better ways of doing things.
Hmm.
And it could be like, how you're teaching reading in a grade one class, and really kind of thinking about new opportunities to ensure that every kid is successful, but you can't do the same thing for every single kid. So that was really kind of how that all started. And then, I'm just sharing stuff that we're doing. And then all of a sudden people are like, hey, you should come speak at our school. I'm like, really? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, so what's your fee? I'm like, you're going to pay me? And I had no clue this is a job. So accidentally, I now speak all over the world. And I think my focus is the thing that I did accidentally is really kind of open up a door for myself I didn't even know existed. What I want to do is to ensure students intentionally figure out some of those doors that didn't exist when I was a kid, that they find themselves going through them as well. So that's a lot of the work that I focus on today with schools and districts.
That makes me think of like we are teaching children that will have jobs that we don't know exist yet,
Yep. Yeah,
right?
and it's like that was like the whole thing is like, how can we prepare kids for jobs that don't exist by doing the same jobs we've always done? So that was like, hey, like let's create a job that doesn't exist. So
Yep.
that was what we did in our own
That was
school
the
district.
beginning of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you define or describe the innovator's mindset?
It's really ultimately about just doing new and better things. And
Mhm.
so,
Okay.
when you like look at, and I think a lot of people look at my work and they see it's really a build on Carol Dweck's work, right? And
Yeah.
really talking about growth mindset. And, it's like, hey, like I'm not good at math yet, that kind of thing. And it's like, hey, we want people to actually really kind of understand information, but that's not really the most important thing. It's actually what you do with it now. And when you have access to all the information in the world, what are you doing to create with it and to leverage it? So even when I like work with teachers and districts, one of the things I always say to them is, listen, I'm not here to tell you how to do your job. That's not my role at all. I don't understand your context. I don't understand your community. And in fact, I would actually challenge you that the expert's not talking to you. You're
Mhm.
sitting beside the experts right now.
Mhm.
All I'm doing is sharing some ideas with you. And your role is to really think about, how do I make these ideas work in, for example, my music class? How do I make
Mhm.
them work in my math class? And it's interesting because I outright say this all the time, is many people, when I go to a district and how they determine how good a speaker is,
Mhm.
is, does this person give me a bunch of stuff I can do the next day with kids?
Yes.
And the thing I challenge people with is, I want you to really think about that, because do you know any group of people who want to be told what to do exactly, who also hate being told what to do other than teachers? It's like, tell me exactly what to do, but don't you dare tell me what to do. So I'm not telling you what to do. You got to figure this out yourself. So I'm just sharing some ideas, but how you kind of like leverage them and utilize them. But so you really, and I think you and I were talking about this before, you're really giving them ownership over the process, but
Mhm.
seeing them as, the people that are making the solutions, because I don't know their kids. I don't know the community. I don't know where they've been or where they want to go. So it's really kind of getting people to really take some ideas and then make them their own and kind of figure out that way pathward. That's really kind of, and that's what I really try to do in my own work, really trying to figure out, like, how do I leverage some of these things? Like, my focus is, my number one is really learning this stuff, is figuring
Mhm.
it out. And then, hey, here's some stuff I'm doing. And if if there's anything I can inspire in you, or can you like leverage this in a different way? Can you utilize this in a way? So like, my first thing is not reading the research on anything. It's just doing it and figuring it out myself.
I love it. That's really great. One of the pieces of ownership, one of the pieces that's required for folks to have ownership in schools is agency,
Totally.
right? Is choice and voice, and I've had some kind of autonomy, and it's, I like to say, who's at the table when choices are made, right? If teachers are not at the table, then the best you can have is buy-in.
Mhm.
The best you could have is buy-in. If teachers start to have voice and choice in these changes, you start to get ownership. And that's exactly what you're saying. And so the opposite of developing ownership is telling people exactly what to do and when to do it.
Totally. And like, even one of the things I do all the time when I work with these groups is I'll share some ideas, share some thinking with them, but I give them like a huge break, like
Yeah.
30 minutes, which is not normal. Like, like for lunch, that'd be like, some people are like 30 minutes for lunch. Like, no, I give them right in the middle of the day. But one of the things that I do is I'll say, hey, I share some ideas with you, go connect with each other, but I need you to fill out this little form and just ask you some questions. And what it asks them is like, hey, what's something that stuck out to you, and like, what's something that challenged you or a question you have, and what's something you want to try moving forward. So while they're all connecting with each other, I'm actually looking at what they wrote.
Yeah.
And what happens is the second part is always built around their questions.
Yeah.
And that's where now, like, the PD is totally shaped to the people in the room. Not like,
Yes.
here's what I think you should know. And the thing I always say to them, like, listen, I actually didn't have anything planned for this, because I've been like going through the form and trying to figure out what you want to learn. So everything I'm doing now is based on what you're asking. So if this sucks, it's kind of your fault, because it's based on what you want to know. But people feel really empowered through that process, because they are now shaping professional learning, like on the spot in that moment, and people really appreciate it. But then I also say, like, hey, did you see how I did this? How can you do this with the students? Like, is there
Yes.
ways that you can take what I just did with you, with 500 people in this room, and really kind of shape it to all of you? Could you do this with 30 kids in yours? And
Yeah.
so you're not just trying to shape it to what they want to learn, but changing the experience. Like, how can they take some of the things that you did in that day to really do in their classrooms?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly it, right? Leading our PDs, how we want teachers to be
Totally.
leading classrooms, period.
Yeah.
I want to shift into AI. I'm really interested in what you have to say about it. What, how does AI support building an innovator's mindset? And also, I have a second question, and I want you to like choose your
Sure.
own adventure here. How have you seen AI used in coaching and leadership that's made like a huge difference? And you're like, oh, that's like a really awesome way of using AI.
Yeah, like, so the thing with, and this is kind of I'll put you through a little test and see what your response is to this. And here's just like a simple question. Do you think kids today are better at technology than we were at the same age? What would you say to that question?
Yes.
Right. Pretty much everyone would say yes. And I would actually say no. And here's why I would say that. If you think so, I grew up, and this is showing how old I am. I grew up with an Apple IIc, right? I don't know if you remember that. You might have that. I don't know if you even know what that is, right? Some of people listening to it. It's the old Apple computer. They had there's like the
Okay.
2C, the 2E, whatever.
Uh-huh.
To get that computer to do anything, you had to
You had
know
to like code.
programming, coding.
Yeah.
So like the depth of knowledge you had to have to make that computer just do the most minimalist of things
Hmm.
was astounding.
Hmm.
And go back even before then. And I like remember I had someone at my an event. They were like really like, I don't like your stuff. I'm like uncomfortable with this. I'm like, do you know how to change a tire? And he's like, yeah. I said, that's technology. And I'm like, listen, I'm gonna be honest with you. I have no idea how to change a tire. And if I had a flat tire, I'd grab my phone, but
Yes.
I probably could go on YouTube and figure it out, but I'm just gonna call somebody to
I'm
fix
gonna
it for
call
me.
someone. Yeah.
I don't want to do it. So you actually have like wisdom with technology I don't actually have, and
Hmm.
as a generation goes. So what we have to really understand is we're not getting kids aren't better with technology than we were at the same age. The technology is so easy to
Yes.
use that we don't really have to think about it. So if you think about this, people listening, if you remember the first generation of iPhones that came out, do you remember the manual that came out? And I ask this question all the time. People put up their hands. They're like, yeah. I'm like, no, you don't, because it didn't come with a manual, because it was so easy. You pull it out of the box, you press the buttons, it would tell you everything to do. So
Hmm.
like, it's basically, if you're not intentional with this stuff, we will actually become dumber through the process, right? And
Yes.
like you think about the phone numbers you know from your childhood and the phone numbers you don't remember right now.
Yeah.
So that's something that's happening over time. So when we're looking at AI, that is going to happen at an exponential level if you're not intentional with it. So you're really trying to focus on like wisdom and experience, like how is it stoking curiosity? How are we leveraging this to do things and find out information that we might not have known before? But it is opening doors to have access to information, but you still have to know some things, right? So I'm working with a group of gifted teachers, and as I was telling you before, I'd moved from Canada to the U.S. about 3 years ago. And one of the things I mentioned to them, and it's like a lot of the rooms that's happening right now, half of them are like, we should not be using AI. This is like going to be the end of the world. And half of them like, we better use this because like if we
Hmm.
don't. So I just kind of aside mention, like I moved to the US and, like your taxes are a little different here and like how you can invest because you have like 401ks and IRAs and it's super confusing and there's like all these different ones, whatever. So I'm like asking people, but no one really seems to know. So I actually just, I thought like, you know what, I'm just gonna kind of throw in ChatGPT and say like, here's who I am, here's what I do. I would like to retire in 10 years and I would like to have a certain amount of income. How would you do like a tax incentivized strategy for investing? And it just gave me a plan and it told me, here's what you do. And it went through and like, I have to have some knowledge to like,
Hmm.
understand what it's telling, but it just made that plan for me. And it was like mind blowing because, this could have cost me thousands and thousands of dollars over time to get this information from someone else. Whereas it cost me $20 a month to do the advanced ChatGPT. So what was really amazing about that experience is, like I said, half and half. Half are interested, half are like, no way.
Hmm.
For the next probably hour, not one person listened to me. Because what did they do? Every one of them opened up their computers and started planning their retirement. They're like, okay, they're like so good. And so the trick is, and it's kind of like what you were talking about earlier, all of a sudden it matters to them
Yes.
and it's important to them. And now they're starting to see value. Now it's not just a thing you cheat on essays with. It's
Yeah.
like, how can I leverage this to actually see value in my own life? And that's one of the things I really try to do with groups is I want you to see that it can be helpful to you because if you see it's beneficial to you, you're more likely to teach it to kids. But
Hmm.
if you're just going to like, how do we do this with kids? And you don't have never had time to like use this in any way that's meaningful. And
Hmm.
so like, even, I was mentioning before, one of the things I do, and is I'll take all those questions that I get from a forum and I'll say like, hey, I want to like look at this individually, but I'll actually just say like, hey, what's a common theme of like these questions?
Yeah.
Like, give me
Hmm.
three common themes, and it like summarizes those things. I could share that link right away, but that's like one of those time savers,
Yeah.
and it's really beneficial to that. But to be able to answer the three big questions that come out of like hundreds, if not thousands of answers takes wisdom. And
Yeah.
that's what really matters is that I don't want to say like, hey, here's the three questions. Now give these people answers based on these three questions. Like I should actually be able to give them some, feedback, some ideas. Now I can leverage, and use that as a thought partner and through that process. But I think it's one of the things I really try to do is never do stuff with this behind the scenes, but do it right in front of people so they can see how quickly it can be done. But then also thinking about like, how are we still having really deep conversations? How are we leveraging this to actually have better time with our students and have really good conversations? But how do we see value for ourselves? So I think that really is the way I look at it, is because like you're seeing Sora 2 come out. I don't know if you're familiar with that. And basically you could make like any historical character person, it's going to look real. They're making videos. So if everybody can do that by a text prompt, then like no one's going to stick out. This kind of comes back to the idea of the innovator's mindset. What are you doing with this
Yeah.
that will actually be hugely beneficial? Because if everyone can make those videos, then it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah.
But it's like what you actually do with it that will differentiate you.
Hmm. And we can't fit it into the old model. Like we have to think about teaching and learning differently, right? Or else it's substitution. It makes me think of like the technology SAMR model,
Yep.
right? And like the first level of technology is you could just substitute, right? Like you're not innovative if you had kids go from writing an essay to typing an essay. That's not innovative.
Right.
Um, yeah, so we have to literally rethink how we are teaching and learning in our classrooms.
Yeah, and
Period.
I think what does matter though is that we are still acknowledging the importance of like there's someone like a really kind of like what are the basic skills that we need to have, right? And I
Hmm.
think that's
Hmm.
I was at a conference I think about it was last year, and someone said we need to de-emphasize memorization, and it was a tech conference. They was like, yeah, and I'm like, oh, such a terrible thing to say. And the reason why is because if you say that to a school where it's not a tech conference, you're getting the half and half. Half are like, no, you need to memorize stuff, all this, and then you're getting this argument, right? And so I actually think it's kind of important to know some basic facts, right?
Hmm.
People will say like, hey, you don't need spell check anymore because like you got spelling tests. I'm like, well, you got to be in the vicinity of the word. You can't like just slap the keys and hope for the best, right? Like you have to have some
Yes.
knowledge, right? And so what I instead of saying like, hey, we need to de-emphasize memorization, what I really kind of focus on is how do we actually develop kids with a really deep understanding of
Hmm.
information
Yeah.
and really that they can leverage it. But if you can do that by default, do you know what will happen? They'll memorize it because if you
Hmm.
really understand something,
Yeah.
you'll actually just kind of innately know it. But if
Hmm.
you only memorize it, it doesn't mean you understand it.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so what that does, it actually really bridges people
Hmm.
to like, because like people that think memorization is important
Hmm.
kind of feel value through that process because you're saying like you're not saying memorization is not important. You're saying we just need to go further.
Yeah.
But also people are like, we don't need stuff because we have Google. They're like, yeah, we should actually kind of know some basic stuff, right? Like I have 3 kids. They know their times tables. Like,
Yeah.
that stuff is important.
It
I think
is.
that's where we're kind of have to be really cognizant of is that some of the really most important basic skills and like having conversations. Like the weird thing is, I'm very comfortable with technology, but I asked you not to give me questions and just
Hmm.
throw stuff out at me. I'm very comfortable talking to people. And if you just get so immersed in technology, we can lose that ability to interact and have conversations. And so I think we have to make sure that we're honoring that stuff and just saying like, what could we do better now, but not
Hmm.
just kind of throwing away everything that's been important. Like somebody said this, like the most important thing that employers are looking for is people who can leverage AI. I'm like, no, they're actually looking for people who have like critical thinking skills, who
People
can actually have
skills.
conversations, yeah, can
Yeah.
like talk to people.
Yeah.
And then the AI stuff is bonus. If you can only use AI, but you can't, be in a room with other people, probably
Yeah.
not the best thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'd say, and my thoughts around AI is I think one of the most important skills in utilizing AI is I call it discernment.
Mhm.
Like and it's when AI gives me the thing, right? I ask it for information or to process this information together. I need to be able to look through it and say, yes, this is a good idea. No, this is a bad idea. And I need to be able to give it feedback. Hey,
Mhm.
change this, tweak that, because
Yep.
I actually know things in my brain that I
Yep.
can discern what I want ChatGPT to change for me.
Yeah, and that's like, and even like having that curiosity and like saying, like when I was talking about the tax incentivized thing, it was like saying, "Hey, blah blah blah, this is that." I'm like, "What is that? Explain this to me." And then kind of go and do my research. That I just don't do what it tells me, but I like ask questions back or have those conversations and kind of dig deeper for information or reach out and say like, "Hey, have you seen this? What do you think about these ideas?" I think the discernment part, one of the things that I say is curiosity is part skepticism and part wonder.
Mhm.
And I was
Ooh, I love that.
watching a video. Someone was talking about like I've really been on a really trying to take care of my health. I lost like 120 pounds during COVID, and really, yeah, I know. So I've really been focused on my health. And I saw this video, and this person was talking about how they're a doctor, and here's what they like really kind of for losing weight. Here's some things, and they're like giving all these supplements, all this other thing. And then I've been a doctor for 20 years, and she has this supplement that you can just buy on her Amazon wish list, and she's going to get a kickback, whatever, right? And you know this. So I was like, ah, that's kind of interesting. I look at the comments, got like 1 million views through this process. But then I started scrolling through and it's like, hey, I'm a gynecologist. Hey, I'm an obstetrician. Hey, I'm this. It's the same person. And so what they're doing is that it's just an AI generated video and they just need you to like fall for one of them and then
Uh-huh.
buy the supplement. And it's like if you watch the video and I showed it to you, you would have no idea that it wasn't a real person. And it's like they show the person in scrubs, all this other stuff in different scenes because they actually pulled a picture from a real doctor, but then
Yeah.
they just made this. And the thing that I talk about with groups is I so wanted it to be true that like
Yeah.
if I just took that supplement, it would just help.
Yeah.
That I almost didn't look. I
Yeah.
almost didn't look like, and the things that you actually have to challenge sometimes are the things that you want to be true the most, the things that
Yeah.
you agree with the most. So that's why that skepticism is really important, is because sometimes we just like see something like AI generated or see some misinformation, and because we like what it says, we don't even
Mhm.
question it.
Mhm.
So you have to question the stuff
Yes.
you agree with.
Yes. Confirmation bias.
100%. And people do it all the time, right? Like I see people posting stuff. I'm like, that took me about 3 seconds to show you that's false. And but you just posted it because it goes with your viewpoint, but it's not even
Yes.
true. And then,
Yeah.
and then you get nervous because you're like, you're teaching, but you're posting stuff that is not true because you
Yes.
agree with it. Like I saw someone saying like, hey, just Google this and show the results to people and that will actually prove your point. I'm like, that's a terrible teaching practice. Like, hey, it's like, hey, you know what we should start doing? Judging books by their covers. It's like seriously, like the modern equivalent of that. I'm like, no, you should actually go into the information and
Yeah.
look into it and like, try to figure out what is true, what is not, where's this coming from. Don't just screenshot the Google search.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and that's like it is so easy to fall in
Yeah.
that trap. And I think that's what I really try to challenge is like
Mhm.
you have to question stuff. You have to do this.
Yes.
Don't just use the technology, but
Yes.
you have to use your brain through the process because it's going to be easier. Like
Mhm.
if you've seen the Sora 2 stuff, like
No.
it's
No.
Michael Jackson. It's like all these different. I'm like, where is this video? And it looks so real, and it's going to be harder and harder to discern. And that's like
Concern.
something
Yeah.
we have to really teach. I want to say our kids, but it's ourselves, right?
Ourselves
Like, we
too.
have to
Yeah.
understand too. Yeah.
And I think
Well,
what
some of
so
it's funny. Some of it is funny. I'm not gonna lie.
oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think one of your main messages here is us as adults, we have to go first, right? And
100%.
we can like and make it meaningful. So coaches and leaders, you're listening to this. Who do you work with? Teachers.
Right.
Start using it first, right? One of my favorite ways of using AI is if I'm a little stumped with working with someone, like, oh, I'm not entirely sure how to navigate this exact situation, I'll put it into chat and say, hey, this situation's happening,
Yep.
I want this outcome. We're a little stuck here. What are some suggestions? I like to brainstorm. I don't like it to give me one answer. And so it gets me going, right? And so how can us as the leaders and coaches of schools use it meaningfully? And then how can we teach teachers to show
Mhm.
students how to use it meaningfully? How do
Yeah.
we as leaders use it meaningfully first, right? How can teachers use it meaningfully to then bring it meaningfully into the classrooms?
Yeah. It's interesting is I know you work with schools and
Mhm.
communities and districts all over. And this last year, someone reached out to me who I get her and I on a phone call, and she has no clue about anything I do. And I'm like, why are you asking me to come here? Like, you don't know anything about me. And I said to her, I said, hey, how did you find me? Like, how did you find my information? And she said, I actually went on to ChatGPT and I said, hey, here's our school district. Who would be a speaker that aligns with what we're trying to do? And your name came up and actually gave the information. And it's like really interesting because one
Wow.
of the things I did probably 15 years ago is we said, look, every kid we work with is going to be Googled. So we have to be
Mhm.
really thoughtful of like what a lot of schools do is like make sure that you can't find anything about them so when they say something stupid. Whereas my focus was, hey, they're getting Googled. Make sure they're doing really good stuff so they earn an advantage when someone finds them. They're going like, wow, this is someone I want. And now it's actually getting to a point where they're not getting Googled anymore. It's like an AI search. So they're not just looking for a presence online. They're looking for expertise. They're looking so like us doing this video and this podcast it will be able to like kind of search through this. And so they're actually looking at, what do you know? What do you share? So even 15 years ago, we were setting our kids up that in a world where people are searching and finding people through AI, they're fine. Whereas a lot of schools said, nope, they can't be online. No, we shouldn't be using technology. No, we shouldn't be doing this. And like, to all the teachers that are listening, and like all the administrators that are listening to this right now, you're probably not looking at the grades of the people you're hiring, but I get you're doing searches on them. I bet you're looking them up. And so sometimes we're not even preparing our kids, let alone for the future, but for what we're doing right now in our schools. Like when we're hiring people, like we're doing searches, doing this. And so when she said it, I was like, oh wow, that's like, and then more and more that's been coming up. And like, if you think about, I know this sounds like I'm going off into like a whole thing. Google had a lawsuit basically a couple years ago, and it was saying that they're going to have to break up the company, like Google, from Google Chrome, from YouTube, because it was a monopoly. That
Okay.
basically searches were, and so because like basically everyone uses Google, right?
Yeah.
Like everyone
Yeah.
uses Google. So fast forward 2 years, the judge said, actually, you're not a monopoly anymore because more and more people are doing searches through AI.
AI.
So like it was
AI.
interesting. Like you think that something that would never go
Yeah.
away,
Yep.
now they're like trying to catch up, right? Like
Yeah.
now you
Yeah,
can
for
say
sure.
AI search, and
Yeah.
so
Gemini.
like
Yeah,
so you're seeing that even what was considered a monopoly, no one could ever 2 years
touch
later.
it.
So now we just think of different ways that we're doing searches,
For sure.
right?
That's
So it's
exactly
kind
it.
of interesting.
It is. All right, we have to wrap up. This was a really interesting conversation.
I told
I've
you I
really
couldn't go for
yeah.
6 minutes. I warned you.
This has been so cool. I really love your perspective around education, the education system, right? How we think about teaching and learning in general. So I really appreciate you sharing some of those thoughts with us and my listeners. Where can folks find you? Find more information about you, find
Look
more
me up on
information about your
ChatGPT, right?
apparently.
You can just fire in ChatGPT. Yeah, georgecouros.com. You'll get access to everything that I do there. So that's the easiest way.
Perfect. I'll put that link in the show notes as well.
Perfect.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.